Cecil, we'll have to get this straightened out because we have to submit our recommendations for people to fill the vacancies
Right.
to the clerk's office by December 29th.
Yeah. I mean, I'm perfectly willing for somebody else to step up. I mean, I believe in more citizen participation, and I don't feel offended, but it just, the math didn't work out when I thought through it. And now that I look at what Jerry reported, they don't have the math right. Or I was appointed for 2 years for some reason the first time, and I don't know what that is.
Well, the stream started, and we can start with the meeting. I'll follow up with you, Cecil, later.
Thanks.
All right. Well, welcome everyone to the December Urban Forestry Commission meeting. This is the last meeting of 2023. And before we get started with the agenda, we'll go through the introductions. And I'll start with the Urban Forestry Commission members. Chris.
You're muted, Chris.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Chris Fiore. What would you like us to say about ourselves for the intros?
We're just identifying ourselves right now.
Gotcha.
Okay. Karen.
Karen McNeil, Urban Forestry Commission.
Thank you. Chardon.
Hello, I'm Chardon Dietrich with Urban Forestry Commission.
Ed.
Ed Macy, I'm the Asheville Greenworks representative on the Urban Forestry Commission.
Sharon.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sharon. This is my last meeting, and I am UFC and was on the Technical Review Committee.
Thank you. Cecil.
Cecil Bothwell. I was 8 years council liaison to the what then was the Tree Commission, and I've been 5 years on the Urban Forestry Commission.
Zoe.
Zoe Boyle, Urban Forestry Commission.
Thank you. And I am Patrick Gilbert, and I am chair of the Urban Forestry Commission. City Council, Kim.
Good afternoon, Kim Roney, Asheville City Council liaison to the Urban Forestry Commission, with gratitude to Sharon and Cecil for your many years of service to our community.
Thank you. City staff, Keith.
Keith Aiken, Urban Forester.
And Mark's not with us yet. Is that right?
Mark's on the call. I'm right here.
There you go. Mark.
Hi, Mark Foster, City Arborist, Asheville Public Works Department.
Thank you. Grania.
Good afternoon, Grania Miser, Planning Urban Design. Urban Planner, I'll be presenting one of the alternative compliance applications to you today.
Thank you. Jackson.
Jackson Marks, Planning Tech with the Planning and Urban Design.
Thank you. Vidila.
Hi, Vidila Savika, Planning.
And is Chris Collins here?
He was not able to join this call at this time.
Okay. Any other city staff or anyone that I've missed? If not, first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the November 2023 Urban Forestry Commission meeting. I hope everyone has had a chance to review the minutes, and I will entertain a motion to approve.
There was an omission in listing the members of the group that Karen and I are on. Chardon was not mentioned in the minutes. There are 3 of us on that committee.
I will add that right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Cecil.
Yep.
So with that amendment, is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Is there a second?
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the November 2023 Urban Forestry Commission minutes as amended. I will now call the roll. Zoe,
Aye.
Cecil,
Aye.
Sharon,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Chardon,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
and I vote aye. So the minutes are unanimously approved. Next on the agenda is alternative compliance for 34 South Lexington Avenue. Ganya?
Thank you, Chairman Gilbert. Good afternoon again, Commission members and Councilwoman Roney. My name is Grania Miser. I'm a urban planner and planning urban design department. I'm going to present the application for alternative compliance for 34 South Lexington Avenue to you today. Apologies in advance. This somehow ended up in the November folder. I was going out of the country, and so it was missing my name and the applicant's name, I think, when it went out to you. So I apologize for that. Just to give you a little background on this, if it sounds and looks familiar as we go through the slides, this body did actually address this, the same application for the same relief back in February 2020. The background is the property has been vacant for 5 years. That includes that previous application that never actually came to fruition, although you had made a recommendation to approve it, but the project actually never got off the ground. So this gentleman, Danny Mancini, is proposing to just open a retail store there. There's no work being done on the exterior of the building, but and very little on the interior of the building. But the vacancy is what's triggering these the level 1 site compliance for this property. The applicant is requesting to eliminate the requirement for the 1 street tree, which is all that would be required under our landscaping standards under 711-3D3, due to just the narrowness of the sidewalk. You'll see as we go through the slides, I've measured the sidewalk. It's about 4.5 feet wide, so it's a really very restrictive piece of infrastructure. You can see there that the slide to the left is looking south on Lexington. The building we're looking at is the second building, the brown building with the roll-up garage door. And then the slide to the right, or the image to the right, is again looking north towards College Street. As you can see, not only is it very narrow, we also have a telegraph pole in there. There's some other utilities in there. Really pretty typical, unfortunately, for what we find a lot in our downtown streets. Just not a whole lot of room. This project was actually triggering sidewalk improvements with our transportation department, but as you can see, the building actually comes fully to the back of curb. So they're not actually going to make them do a 10-foot sidewalk. They will just do ADA compliance at this point because there's just simply no room. And that older little dip there that you can see was initially a little drive-in break in the sidewalk there. That will be actually leveled so that the sidewalk is compliant again. So those are the conflicts on the site. Staff have reviewed this one before. I went back to the property a few weeks ago. Not that anything has changed, but it just helps to see it with your own eyes. It really is extraordinarily narrow, narrower than some of the sidewalks I've presented to you before in the past. The requirement to expand the sidewalk will just be for ADA compliance only, and just in consultation and conversation with our transportation engineer between the existing conditions and the little improvement that can happen just given the site restrictions. We really don't think that we could support a tree grade in this portion of the sidewalk at all. So it's very short and sweet. It's pretty limited, and we feel that the request meets, the requirements that we're required to bring to you. I'm happy to answer any questions. I see Cecil has raised a hand, so please go ahead.
Cecil?
I would request that everyone turn off their microphones when they're not talking, because we were getting a lot of crosstalk somehow.
Cecil, that might be from my office. Let me just ask everybody here. Sorry, bear with me. Thank you.
Okay. Anyway, it made it somewhat hard to hear.
Yeah, I was actually monitoring that, Cecil, and I think it was coming from Grania. So it's just background noise from her office.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you want her to represent?
No, I think I pretty well, and I've read the written material.
Okay.
Her sound quality was really bad to begin with. I don't know what kind of microphone it was going through, but it was difficult even before the crosstalk.
Sorry, thank you for bringing that up, Cecil. I have let everybody know it's hard in an office when other people. Once I unmute, it kind of picks everybody up. Is there anything I can, restate for you?
No,
So,
I understood. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
One clarification. The Urban Forestry Commission approved the same alternative compliance request in 2020. And the reason it's coming back to us is merely because of the change in ownership of the property. Is that correct?
Right, Patrick. The project that this application was associated with in 2020 never actually happened. So all the permitting was done, but for whatever reason, and we rarely know why, that actual approved application permit never went through. It was for a renovation of that building, and so the building has sat vacant since then. With nobody in it, and now this gentleman, this young man is coming back to try and open a small business in it. So you're exactly correct. You did review it it was February 2020, I believe, but it was a much bigger scale project. But again, the only landscaping requirement at that time was just that one street tree, and the exact same, limitations of the site were presented to this body. I don't know who was on that in that group back in 3 years ago, but yes, it was presented 3 years ago. The exact same ask for the exact same building.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions or comments from the commission? Yes, Karen.
I just have a quick comment or question about what's stopping us from having a planting in lieu for these kinds of alternative compliances where there's not. Right?
Before we proceed, we're still getting a lot of other people coming through your microphone.
I didn't understand most of what Karen said because of that.
Right. Karen, do you want to repeat that?
Sure. I am just wondering, I'm sure there's a reason, but I'm just curious to explore it. Why can't do a planting in lieu for the alternative compliances that don't have space for planting on their site? What, can we not plant somewhere in a public area and have a planting in lieu?
No.
Why not though? Is there some more information about that?
Sharon, go ahead.
Yes, because it's not in 711.3 as a requirement. It's where the alternative comes into play, and it could be done through a text amendment. And this is not applicable to 719. So there's no tree save area where our fee in lieu comes into play. Sorry, Grania, I know you can answer that, but your feedback is terrible.
Thank you, Sharon. I appreciate it. And I apologize. There's just a lot of people in the office today. So I'm going to stay muted unless somebody needs me to answer something specifically. Thank you.
Karen, did you understand my explanation?
Mostly, I'd still like to explore it because it seems pretty common. It seems like something that we could explore.
Yeah, oh, most definitely, but it just has to be added into the UDO.
Right. Yes. I wasn't thinking it would happen this time, but definitely.
No, I know. I'm just saying that in order to make anything of that change, then a text amendment would have to be added to because our alternative compliance comes through 711.3.
Okay. Vidila?
I can add a note in our working draft of the landscaping ordinance that we're updating, Karen, that we should add an alternative compliance for cases like this to plant in a different location.
Thank you.
That would be great. Thank you, Vidila. Ed?
Yeah, we're a little bit off topic here, but we really need to even have a broader change because there were many times when we were suggesting alternatives to alternative compliance beyond planting in lieu, but other, species selection, alteration of buffer configurations, things like that. But I know Shannon always pushed back on us because we didn't have the authority to offer recommendations, but only to approve the request for alternative compliance. So all of that is to say, Vidila, maybe we should think through what's really needed rather than just making a simple text amendment.
Aye, aye.
All right. Are there any other questions or comments for Grania? Seeing none, then I will entertain a motion to approve the alternative compliance for 34 South Lexington Avenue.
Real quick, Mr. Chair, just want to confirm that there is no public comment at this time. No one's waiting to public comment.
Thank you, Jackson.
I move to approve.
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any comment or discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I will call the roll. Chardon?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Sharon?
Aye.
Cecil?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So the alternative compliance for 34 South Lexington Avenue is approved. Thank you very much, Grania, for your presentation.
Thank you all. And again, I'm sorry for the feedback. Have a wonderful afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Next item is public comment. Jackson, is there anybody on the line?
Not at this time, sir.
Okay. So I'm sure you saw the link under public comment for a written comment. I'll explain this. This written comment was submitted by Gloria Shin for the November meeting. We didn't get it until I think late Monday afternoon, the day before the meeting. And it was sent to me and Keith and Zoe. I did not see the email with the public written public comment in time to get it on the agenda for the November meeting. Since then, Karen received an email from Gloria wanting to know why her written comments weren't part of the November meeting. So I reached out to Gloria and explained the circumstances and said, I will make sure that her comments are included in the December meeting. if you read the comments, it had to do with the issues surrounding the municipal golf course work and the removal and pruning of trees. As far as the city is concerned, that chapter specifically related to the municipal golf course has been closed. So I'm not sure that there's any public comment or any commission comment on Gloria's letter. But if anyone wants to make any remarks, yes. Sure. Chris?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Are you calling on me, Patrick?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I was curious to hear about the remediation efforts on the trees that were damaged from Mark, if there's any update there.
Mark?
Yeah, sorry, I'm a little slow on pushing buttons over here on my end. I don't have anything new to bring up about that. We talked about that in past meetings. Chris Corral had made arrangements with a local company to do remediation work on the trees. Black Mountain Arborists was the company that went out there and worked on that. I'm not aware of anything new to discuss about that.
So the work was completed?
You could probably check in with Chris to see if there was any remaining work that he was going to have Black Mountain Arborists perform. I'm not aware that they had anything left over they hadn't done yet.
Mm-hmm. And there's no further treatments for the trees that were improperly pruned. As far as I know, the soil remediation was just for the compaction.
Mm-hmm. So what are you asking about?
I guess I just want to, for Gloria's sake, ensure that, is Chris Corral here present to speak to this as far as the work being completed?
Well, I think we can all see the list of attendees if we click
She is not
on that.
No.
But as far as the printing, are you talking about like wound paint or something, or what are you asking about?
Well, wound paint, that's kind of, my understanding is a lot of wound paints aren't necessarily effective, but there could be other ways to support the trees to process those large wounds, such as, further soil remediation or phosphorus treatments, things along those lines. But I understand that the case is closed. I think I regret that I did not speak up in earlier meetings about the, a couple things. One being the number of trees being remediated was very small compared to the number of trees that were damaged. So I just wanted to voice that on behalf of Gloria that, there were many, many more trees than I think there was like 6 or 8 that were being treated for soil remediation that could have used some help. So that's all. Thanks.
Patrick, are you calling on me? You're muted.
Sorry, yeah, Sharon. Sorry.
To Jardin's point for Gloria, she sent me an email regarding pathways that were being built for carts, and they were under the critical root zone. And I did not have access to the plans, and I could not see them, and I didn't know what kind of paths were being constructed, and frankly, just did not have the time to research the overall design. So I think what I'm asking is, where are these plans posted so that I can send Gloria that way, or when I have time to take a look and see what these paths look like, because I do know that some paths can go into the critical root zone and not necessarily affect the impact the tree. But then again, there's some paths that can go in that can do a huge amount of damage on the tree, depending on the path. So my broad overall statement is to find out where the plans are located. So when she did send me that, I could have looked it up, but I just didn't know where they were. So I didn't answer the question. In fact, I'm sorry, Gloria, if you're listening, I ignored it.
Cecil?
In addition, this is not what I was going to say. I have something else, but in addition, paths over tree roots are going to suffer tree dam. The trees will raise them up. I mean, like, lift up the asphalt over time. So it's kind of a stupid place to put them. But what I was going to offer to Chardin is we'll be talking a little later about enforcement. And that is a consistent problem with the city. There, you know, this contractor apparently did a bad job. I'm not an expert in any regard, but there should have been repercussions. And as far as I know, there weren't.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to the next part of this discussion. As you all know, we voted the last meeting to hold our commission meetings next year in person. And so I wanted to have a short discussion among the commission members on how we handle public comment. Before the pandemic, when we met in person, most public comment came via people who attended the meetings in person. So I think this is probably the best method to provide public comment. I do not think that, at least initially, there'll be opportunities for hybrid meetings next year. So there won't be an opportunity for people to give their public comment virtually. So the only two methods left would be in person and in writing. So I just wanted to know if any commission members had any thoughts on that. Yes, Cecil?
Well, that seems quite reasonable to me. I mean, that's what's available. And not to relitigate, but I've been tracking the sewage load of COVID reported weekly, and it's way up in Asheville. And I had COVID before Thanksgiving after 3 years of being extremely careful. It's still here, and it's still killing people. But I'm not trying to. I'm just mentioning. We got to be careful.
Chris?
Yes, I like the idea of having both in person and in writing, and I'm wondering if there's I had two other options that one was wondering about. Are any other groups, or is it possible to put together some sort of like online submission form so it doesn't have to be a written out PDF or something like that? That might be a little more accessible. And then I was also curious, I know this is a bigger discussion, but I just wanted to like throw it out there. If there's been discussion in the past about holding these meetings in the evening so that folks so that it's more accessible for the general public.
Jackson, do you want to respond to Chris's initial?
Yeah, addressing the first one, public input is the source where where the public interacts with city commissions and boards. Chardin went above and beyond and submitted a PDF along with her public comment. Those get immediately sent. Once those are submitted, they go to staff, and then we send them to the boards and commissions. For doing evening ones, that would depend on what the commission wishes to set the calendar as, and what flexibility is available at city resources.
But Jackson, I don't think that can change for next year, though. That would be something that since we're set for next year, I don't think we can change that now.
Yeah, I believe there hasn't been a call to change prior to this, and I think the clerk wanted the dates. Yeah, the clerk already has received the dates for the 2024 calendar.
Right. So, as you all know, usually the city policy in regards to public comments is that the body to whom these public comments are directed usually do not respond to the comments. That's not to say that the comments can't generate discussion at another date in terms of some kind of response. I did want to give the commission members an opportunity to respond to this specific comment so Gloria could have her day in court, so to speak. Going forward, what does the commission wish to do in terms of public comment and whether or not to respond to it in that given meeting? Sharon?
Yeah, I think public comment that's written should be read and discussion. I missed that. I thought that's what was planned all the time, was to read the public comment and have discussion on it.
There's no requirement to read the public comment.
Oh, I think we should. As to Cecil's point, there's a lot of people that do not want to meet in person. I think it gives the opportunity. I don't know. I think kind of like what we did with the last comment, we didn't come up with any resolution. We just discussed our thoughts and feelings behind it.
So are you suggesting that that written comments be read during the meeting?
During the public, yes.
As opposed to before the meeting by each individual commission member?
I'm sorry. What I'm saying is that we have the people that show up for public comment that talk, and then whomever chair is, they read the public comment that was submitted. And then if we have discussion on the public comment, then we do like we did our last, and we don't necessarily need to have a vote or resolution on the public comment. It's just sometimes public comment that's written needs to have a discussion.
Anybody else have any thoughts, questions? Yes.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up, Sharon. I think that reading letters that were submitted, that probably would have been a different discussion had Gloria's letter just been read right now. And I think moving forward, I think that to give them a full voice is important in a meeting if they're not there to read their own letter. Thank you.
Cecil?
As a former newspaper editor, I would suggest that perhaps if we're going to read them aloud, there be a word count limit. Like the Citizen Times is 200 word count on a letter to the editor. If you can't be concise, you're just rambling. We aren't going to read letter after letter after letter if they're 400 words long or 500 words long or whatever. I don't know how we can impose that, but
so in oral public comment, the speakers are limited to 3 minutes. And there is an established word count for a 3-minute speech. I can't bring it up right now what that word count is, but it's somewhere in the neighborhood of, say, 400 words. And so we can include on the Urban Forestry Commission webpage that kind of information, that if somebody wants to submit written comments to the commission, they must restrict their comments to whatever word count we come up with. Otherwise, they won't be read at the meeting. Chris?
Oh, I just wanted to ask, how many public comments are we generally getting, like, per month, just so we have an idea?
Very few. I think we had more, and people like Ed, Sharon, and Cecil, who go back farther than I do, can comment on this. But in my 5 years on the Urban Forestry Commission, when we met in public or in person, we had more people come and speak to the commission. Since we went to a virtual meeting because of the pandemic, I can only remember maybe one or two. All right, so then we will go forward in making some changes to the on the Urban Forestry Commission web page in regards to the requirements for public comment going forward. Okay, any other discussion? All right, thank you very much for that. Staff reports, Urban Forester, Keith.
Yeah, thank you. So staff reports for this month, it's actually been a pretty, full month for me. Pretty much the same thing, a lot of different meetings, a lot of different education. Some of the, I guess, kind of sticking points, things that kind of popped out this week as far as different meetings. Sat in a historic resilience workshop down at Old Souls. I was hoping that they would kind of bring up some trees and some vegetation, that sort of thing. But it was mainly, geared toward historic buildings. So I was not disappointed. I did learn a lot. A lot of staff were in attendance. So started the month off with that. I did still working on my project charter, which I do realize is kind of holding up some other processes as well. One of the biggest problems that I'm finding, or one of the hangups, is just meeting with the right staff to complete the different sections of the charter. So that's kind of, I would like to think that things can move a little bit quicker, but I understand that everyone also has a big job is under their plates as well. Let's see, you did meet with Vadilla and Stephanie about landscape updates and what we hope to push forward and the process that it all goes behind that as well. Kind of what we're looking for the future. I think once again it's a matter of time. I think it's, to me, it's something that should happen a lot quicker than it does, but it's we are dealing with a complex situation. There's that. Let's see. I've been searching around for tree dedication sites for those that have done circling off the commission. I have talked with Parks and Rec and waiting on some answers for those. I've been working on a retreat meeting place. Let's see. Lots of complaints, at least this week, lots of complaints and reporting. It's been certainly, or I should say last week was the big week. It seems like there's a lot of people dealing with development and wondering about how they can save trees, or at least, look at different options. Unfortunately, a lot of people come to me, it's usually too late, and things have already been approved. So we are seeing, quite a few really big, large trees coming down. It kind of saddens me, but, it's part of the process. And let's see, I think last but least, went in and talked to Eric Bradford at Greenworks this week, and we had just talked about a few things about workforce development program. We talked about Hardesty Lane, and then setting up some new nurseries in and around town. That's really about it. Any questions?
I will say that Zoe and I met with Keith and Stephanie Munson-Dahl several weeks ago. Stephanie is the new director of planning and urban design. Zoe and I stressed the fact that we hope that whenever there's any staff discussions, particularly with reference to any kind of ordinance change, any kind of discussions on major policies or initiatives, such as missing middle housing or affordable housing, or a comprehensive review and revision of the Unified Development Ordinance, that Keith, as the urban forester, be part of that staff discussion. We just want to make sure that in all these discussions, there's time to talk about anything that could adversely affect our urban forest and our ability to protect and preserve our urban forest tree canopy. And Stephanie did give her word that she would make sure that Keith is involved in all those kind of discussions. So we'll move on. City Arborist, Mark.
Hey there. It's been a pretty typical month this time of the year. Been finalizing my planting list for the spring, and a couple of my staff are grinding stumps. We got a new stump grinder, which that was pretty cool. We managed to kill ours last year. Kind of overworked it apparently. I have everybody, all 7 of my staff, I normally have 10, working on holiday decorations downtown. We stopped doing them for a minute, I guess, because somebody noticed that they were, poor looking. But anyway, after I don't know, somebody above my pay grade discussing it with them, we resumed work installing the holiday decorations, or we're still working on it. Just normal stuff this time of year. Any questions?
Okay, thank you, Mark. We'll move on. The tree canopy preservation report. Nancy is enjoying the delights of London this week, so she's not here. So in her stead, Jackson will give a report.
Sure thing. Just a quick intro to this. This is the tree canopy protection ordinance. This is how developers meet the ordinance. For some reason, the October numbers weren't ready for the November meeting, and they carried over. So this is October and November. For the month of October and November, this is the square footage planted, preserved, and how much fee in lieu we got for those 2 months. The total number of projects for canopy preserved have increased from 12 to 15, and canopy planted from 6 to 8. And that's what the data shows.
Thank you, Jackson. Is there any questions or comments for Jackson? Okay, thank you, Jackson. We'll move on to old business working group updates, policy working group. Ed?
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. I guess I have a couple of things to report. The first is that we did finally hear back from Chris Collins and the city attorney I guess it was Eric Edgerton, that on the boundary tree issue. To refresh everybody's memory, we're recommending a change to 719 that would require neighbors to enter into agreements with each other when a builder or developer is doing some activity on their property that's impacting a neighbor's tree. As you're all aware, tree roots extend pretty far beyond the drip line of a tree, and it's pretty easy to injure a neighbor's tree by doing foundation work or whatever's going on as a builder. And the city attorney pushed back, saying that it's not legal to force a contract between two parties, requiring an agreement. So that kind of puts us back to square one in trying to figure out a way to protect our neighbors' trees when land development is occurring. And I think the solution is probably to add some requirements in the permitting process, so that as a builder is preparing their tree protection plans, they also reflect the critical root zone of boundary trees and the percentage of impact that's going to occur because of the construction activity, and present some way to mitigate the impact prior to permitting. So in this way, we're addressing the city's concern by not requiring an agreement between neighbors, but the city is going to have should have a requirement prior to permitting to make sure that those neighbors are protected. In my opinion, that's nothing less than putting up erosion control devices to keep mud off neighbors' properties. It's a pretty simple requirement to ask. We have not discussed this in detail with Chris Collins yet. We haven't had the opportunity to do that. But Patrick, I believe that you were trying to schedule a meeting so that we can move forward on this issue. As far as I can recall, that is the one outstanding issue that remains with respect to 719.
Right. Before you move on, or we take other questions or comments, the last time I talked to Chris, which was at least several months ago, about the particularly the proposed amendments to 719, he brought up the fact that the planning and urban design, was considering whether or not to request funding to hire a consultant to do a comprehensive review and a revision of the UDO. And I asked him, would that prevent the proposed amendments to 719 going forward on their own? At that time, he said he didn't think so, but I need to circle back with him because I want to make sure nothing has changed since that discussion, and that the proposed amendments to 719 will go forward and not be rolled into any comprehensive review and revision of the UDO, which could take anywhere from 1 to 2 years. So I hope that answers your question, Ed.
It does. I think Sharon and Vidila both have other hands raised.
Well, let me go with Sharon first.
719 is so limited with who is required to do that. And 711.3 also is limited. And a lot of these boundary tree issues are single family development. So I'm thinking if we could expand our box and say that maybe a permit would be required for everybody where a boundary tree. So if I go in and want to do a bunch of work and I'm affecting my neighbor next door and I say I have a boundary tree, then I have to pull a permit for that boundary tree impact or removal, so that it takes more of the community as opposed to level 2s, level 3s, and minor and major developments, that we include more of the community. I don't know if that can be done, but if I have to pull a permit to do work in my house, then I would think that I would have to pull a permit for a boundary, even though I'm not required to do 719 with the work I'm doing on my house. So what I'm saying is, let's broaden our ask as opposed to cramming it in. I can see if we can get it on 719, that's better than nothing. I'm all for that.
You are correct. I do want to get it into 719, but you're correct that we should probably broaden the focus of this issue. If your next door neighbor were to do something that destroys your car, that's a serious thing, and it has consequences. These trees are living biological organisms, and sometimes it could cost upwards of $10,000 or even more to have a tree removed because it was killed from construction activities. So I think neighbors should be held accountable for the damage that they impart on trees, and there's some really simple ways to protect neighbors by having simple permit requirements. So expanding, definitely, let's get it in 719 because that's clearly a visible problem that we're looking at. A demonstratable problem because we've got examples, and then let's broaden our focus on this to just look at other places where we can put that patch in. Padilla?
I was just going to say, you probably don't need to loop back with Chris. If we got funded for UDO updates, however that funding would come, it wouldn't arrive until July, and then we would contract and begin the project, which would, be 6 months start date after July, So I think anything that's in the works right now is likely going to sail forward, assuming it's going to move forward within 6 months or so.
Well, thank you, Vanilla. That's good news to hear. I agree with Ed that we should get some kind of language regarding boundary trees into 719. However, if we want to pursue something regarding requiring private property owners to get a permit to take down a boundary tree, that can't be involved in 719 because 719 only applies to development projects. So we would have to be a little creative in how we do that. And I will say that state law is probably going to work against us on that one. But there's no harm in at least throwing it out there and what we get back. Sharon?
Yeah, it'd be nice to see if we've got any other city or county in North Carolina that's got a permit for a boundary tree. I mean, Wilmington, when we had them in for the last retreat, I researched everything in a whole lot of other cities, but I did not research that. So that may be something to look into. Because I know that when I left the city, I left in a different state, granted, that there was a big uproar, but they did permit boundary trees. You had to get a permit. And they used the guise of civil, that it avoided the civil problem in courts because boundary trees start out civil. And then, of course, everybody calls the city and goes, why are they allowed to do that? And so, maybe that can be tied in somehow. I don't know how we could work it out, but, again, ask and then, ask for forgiveness later. I'm not sure.
Yeah, let me respond before we go to Cecil. You're right that the city will push back if the perception is that this is a filler matter and neighbors should just fight it out amongst themselves. The differentiation is that if the city is already involved in permitting an activity in the property, and permitting that activity can result in damages to the adjacent property, then the city has responsibility to include that consideration in the permit process. And I think that's where we have an opportunity to cast a wider net. So But, well, in my opinion, I think we should look for incremental changes. And 719 is a really practical place and a place where, I think we can make the biggest difference most quickly. And then we could look at casting a wider net down the road a little bit. Cecil?
If I'm still on the enforcement group after this meeting, we could look into the question of other counties in the state, other municipalities and boundary tree issues. I mean, because that's what we're trying to get after is enforcement. Most of our enforcement look is post damage, but that's a piece of it. I mean, yeah, so it's on my radar.
That would be appreciated if you could. One last note on that before I move on to chapter 20 is that most, in my experience over the last 40 years, most boundary tree damages can be avoided with a little foresight and a little less ignorance. So it's a preventable problem. Okay, moving on to chapter 20, the policy working group met several times over the course of the last couple of weeks, and we worked through chapter 20 in its entirety, yet again, starting from scratch, and prepared a document with recommendations, not within the text of 20 itself, but as written comments on the side of a Google Doc, with recommendations for revision. And the focus on this revision was, number one, to bring chapter 20 into 21st century language with respect to its intent and also conformance with tree care industry standards. Number two, to create a special protected class of trees, landmark trees in particular. Three, to create a certain degree of citizen oversight with respect to how publicly owned trees are managed, and then four, to help foster inter or cross-departmental awareness about the management and care of trees under public trust in the city of Asheville. Publicly owned trees under the trust of the city. So that revision has been submitted. I thank Chardon and Karen for putting so much time into this. So that those recommended changes have been sent back to the city, and the ball is in their court now. And I suspect we'll sit down after the first of the year and talk through all of the recommendations that we've tendered to this point. And unless there's some questions, that's all I have, Patrick. Patrick, you muted.
Thank you, Ed. Are there any comments, questions for Ed? Okay. I do want to thank Ed, Karen, and Chardon for all the work they've done in the past couple weeks, because things got so confused. They had to really go back and start over from the beginning. I think that was a good process, though, and I think we're in a better position for getting chapter 20 discussed and getting an agreement early next year. So thank you guys for doing that. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Urban Forest Master Plan. Zoe?
Yes, I don't have anything to report from this group since last time. We're still looking at moving forward with the plan.
Okay, Sharon?
Yeah, I meant to ask last time, Zoe. The Urban Forest Master Plan that we're using as a template is which state in Tennessee again?
It's Knoxville.
Knoxville. Do they tie in with their urban forest master plan with their UDO? Is there a tie-in with enforcement so that with the master plan, it's got an actual backup with their UDO?
I don't know the answer to that question. I would have to actually look at their master plan again. It is online. I'm not aware that they do at this time.
I can answer that to a certain extent. There are recommendations based on some of the goals that they have that will result in policy changes that will tier to their UDO.
Thank you.
Can I
Go ahead.
ask a question?
Yeah.
I'm going to, Keith, if I can throw the ball into your court. This working group is really ready to roll up our sleeves and get with the city to draft RFPs to get this process rolling. So my question to you is, when can we get started?
Well, there's no real easy answer to that. As I kind of talked about earlier, it's all about for me getting that project charter finalized, meeting with the folks that I need to meet with. And then once that gets signed off on everyone, then we can move forward with those. But we have talked about, you all writing that RFP, and it's just a matter of me getting that charter completed and then having a meeting with the proper people, and then you're all free to go from there. But yeah, we definitely want to use your expertise in that end. And but it's, once again, it's just certain things that have to get done before we move to the next step, and that's where I'm at right now.
That's great. Well, if we can get it going in the first quarter of next year, I think that should be a good target goal.
Yeah, it's certainly, I would like to, I thought I'd be able to finish this up a little bit quicker than what I have. So the charter right now is the number one item for me. So yeah, hopefully we can get that and start that next year.
Thank you, Ed and Keith, and Zoe. Moving on, the appropriate species list. Karen, do you have any update?
No major updates. I did reach out to Phil Stiles, and she's probably going to write a little blurb about the importance of emphasizing native species and Asheville's honorable distinction of being the first bee city. And I think once that's written, we'll be able to see, where we can put it. But once we're able to see that, it'll make more sense, I think. And I'm hoping that we can fit it in somehow alongside or in a link next to the ASO. And then it's in Keith's hand really right now. So how's it going, Keith, with that?
Everything's in Keith's hands today. So yeah, I mean, once again, it's kind of taken a spot on the back burner. That charter's E and number one for me right now. That's because it doesn't need council approval to be approved. I guess it could be ready to go anywhere at any time. I just need to fill in the little parts of each individual species, make sure that it's clean, and then we can offer it up there. But it does take some work. Probably a couple days, I would imagine, and we can have it buttoned up. But trying to find an hour here and an hour there, and kind of jumping off. I almost need to retreat myself, and then just venture out into the woods to finish this without interruption. But right now, it's the charter, and just want to kind of stress that. And as soon as I get that charter done, then I'll be able to jump in and put my time elsewhere.
Yes. Who's up there? Oh,
sorry, Patrick. It's Kim. As your liaison, having sat in these meetings for a few years now, I've found that the folks at this table are so eager to help. And I'm sure at every opportunity that some of those things that are on your plate, Keith, that could use extra eyes, there would be eagerness in the community to support you. So I just wanted to name that, no one person can solve all these problems. So don't hesitate to reach out to this group. They're so resourceful.
Yeah, and I sent those lists out. So yeah, if anybody wants to go through those lists and kind of fill in the blanks, man, I would love for that to happen.
Thank you, Kim. Karen?
Yeah, I was thinking that, but since you said that, Kim, I'm going to say it out loud. I'm happy to help input some of the species into that list.
All right. Is there any other questions or comments for Karen or Keith? Okay, moving on to the enforcement working group, Karen and Cecil.
Yeah, we've divided up our effort a little bit. Karen's been looking into one element about enforcement that has already gone on and how that has happened. I've been looking into what the rules are for enforcement. And Chardon, I was looking into another element. I'm sorry, I'm skipping on it. What I've found, taking a pretty hard look at the enforcement mechanisms in the city code, it's pretty unclear. I mean, for instance, one of Karen's questions to Vadilla, he answered with an email this week, and he mentioned something I hadn't thought of, which is that cutting a tree on a steep slope, it's tree by tree. I hadn't really. I thought it was like if you did damage on a steep slope, that was you were going to be cited and then fined for that. But from his language, it means if you cut 10 trees, you're going to be cited 10 times, which means my neighbor, who I brought up over and over again because he caused a landslide here by illegally cutting on a steep slope and bulldozing, he would have been paying $100 a day. He would have been paying $2,000 a day for the damage he did. He was never fined. He promised to replace. You're allowed within 30 days to replace a tree above 6 inches DBH that you cut down illegally with a 2-inch tree. But you have to plant them, and he took his very long time. And so what I witnessed firsthand, upslope from me, which caused a landslide into the street, was the failure of the whole system. And it seems to me that enforcement in the system is an extreme problem. It seems like the UDO should, for instance, stipulate that the $100 fine per day applies to tree by tree by tree, not just if you goofed and accidentally bulldozed property on a steep slope. It's not very reassuring, and it's not even very clear how fines might be imposed. I know Sharon's in her neighborhood has had the same sort of thing happen. It feels like a broad problem that needs to be tightened up. We know what the fine is if you get a speeding ticket. Why shouldn't we know what the fine is when you cut down a tree above 6 inches DBH? The other thing that Vadilla mentioned is once they're cut down, you can't measure the DBH. Well, I would think there ought to be some stipulation that say if a stump is 1 foot wide, you can be pretty sure that DBH is not going to be less than 6 inches. Anyway, that's the part I've seen in enforcement. What have you got, Karen? Or Sharon? Yeah.
The problem I ran into when I was dealing with enforcement is that if a property was graded within, and that was your issue of your neighbors, is they graded 25 years ago. So therefore it wasn't quote unquote virgin land. So therefore they were not entitled they didn't have to be fined for it, and because they had been previously graded. And so if anything has been previously graded, then that exempts them from a lot of fines. Also, what exempts is that you take the tree down in steep slope A, you're okay. But if you take it out in B, you're okay, but not in A. But if you go in with a grader and take out the stump, then you're violating the grading permit. And so therefore, then you can get zoned. So I know from being deep into steep slope A and B that those need to be rewritten, period. And they need to be more applicable to the actual things that are actually going on. And also the replacement of species, it needs to be changed. So if you have nothing else to do in the next couple of years at UFC, you could definitely tackle steep slope A and B, because both of those are a mess. But as what I'm saying is the ambiguity of, you can take a tree down in A but not in B, or B and not in A, and if you bring in a grader and grade it, then you're violating the grading. But if you leave the stump there, then you're okay. So there's all of the nuances of which UDO are you violating, and in what sense, and zoning is the one that makes that determination.
Right.
When we were going through chapter 20, and Ed, maybe you can chime in on this, I believe we added the tree valuation formula to apply to a designated or a regulated tree that was removed without a permit, and that we can still use that tree valuation formula.
I believe that's correct. We also had a canopy replacement standard for the removal of regulated trees, but we did reference the tree evaluation guide that's published by the Council of Tree and Landscape Appraisers. Yes.
So we did add that into chapter 20, but please look at it, and everybody look at it and see how it could be done better, if you have thoughts of how it could be done better.
Another element we've discussed is whether there be some way to require realtors to inform buyers of steep slope property about the rules. Because as it is, the owner has to discover it on their own. And it would be worthwhile, I think, to find some way to communicate to arborists that they should communicate to people that are contracting them the rules about steep slopes. Okay, Sharon, laugh, but there ought to be some way.
Well, another thing that we're dividing and working on is clarifying the permit process, because it's different for steep slope than it is for trees in designated historic districts. So my understanding is steep slopes go through public works, and designated historic districts go through planning and urban design, and then through HRC. So part of the problem is that there's not really good education out there for folks to really understand the permit process.
Yeah.
Thank you, Cecil and Karen. I assume that at some point the enforcement working group will bring back recommendations for the commission to review and take action on.
Yes.
Okay.
And I want to commend Vidila. Something he mentioned in his email to Karen this week was that if you use the Asheville app, it's very clear how to report a property that is overgrown, that's an eyesore. It is not at all clear how to report a violation of the steep slope ordinance. And somehow the language on the Asheville app could be tweaked just a little bit so that it would be like trees and landscape. And then people would go, oh, this person cut down trees. You know, I mean, it's kind of hidden at this point. So a simple tweak to the Asheville app might get more reporting.
Thank you. Are there any further questions or comments for Cecil or Karen? Okay, then we'll move on to the missing middle housing update. Zoe?
I think Vidila is going to give a presentation. Is that still on the agenda?
He's giving a presentation on the proposed amendments to 711.3, including the tree planting standards.
Under missing middle housing?
No, that's separate.
Oh, okay. I understood that he was going to actually saw it on the list of the next presentations about, I'm going to call it MMH, that he was giving a presentation to us today. Is that happening?
That is not happening.
Okay. So I read.
I was just to let you know, I was prepared. I was prepared for that.
Okay.
But that's fine. If you don't want me to do that, that's fine.
I'm okay either way. But I did go to the online presentation about the latest draft of the MMH report, and I read through the entire report, and I wrote some recommendations that I can't find them on our drive, but I wrote a document for our members to look at and provide edits if needed. But basically, what I said in the beginning is that I would like to see, as part of the UFC, I would like to see a real emphasis throughout the document, or maybe in the beginning, on the preservation of mature trees and the consideration of mature trees, especially when in the discussions of walkability and creating more walkable communities through missing middle housing. Also, in section 7.2, which are the policy recommendations, I basically added just a little bit of text about priority given to maintaining urban tree canopy, particularly existing mature trees on lots and street trees. And I have that document, and I can resend it to Jackson to load up there if I just couldn't find it. It may be up there for everybody to look at.
Could you resend it? I believe I put that in there, but I may have misplaced it, I'm afraid.
Okay. So if everybody could look at that document and provide any edits, I did it pretty quickly, and there may be some typos and things of that sort in it, but what I did is I took the sections in section 7.2 and I copied them, and then I highlighted my suggested changes to those sections. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, there it is.
Yeah. Now I remember, Zoe. You finished this after the agenda was posted online, so this was added as an amendment to the agenda.
And basically, in the policy section, I'm just suggesting that instead of maybe implying that priorities about urban canopy might be set aside, and I'm just saying that I'm not certain that's what it says. I would like to see us prioritize the preservation and improvement of urban forest canopy for our purposes.
So, Zoe, do you want to give the commission members an opportunity to read through your report and offer any amendments to your feedback?
Yes, and I believe the not sure when the deadline for the feedback to the survey, the Missing Middle Housing Advisory Committee survey. I think it may be Friday. I was planning to submit this document to that survey on Friday. So if you could provide any edits before then, it would be good.
Vidila, can you give us any clarity on the deadline for survey feedback from the Missing Middle Housing Advisory Committee?
They've requested 2 weeks. We can leave that open as long as you want. It's the holidays. There's not a lot getting done. We're going to take that information ourselves and incorporate it ourselves. So, say by the end of the year.
And I would like to point out that there are many opportunities to see the presentation on the latest draft. Maybe Vidila, you could flash those up there somewhere or tell us.
To tell you what, sorry?
The many opportunities for the public and for other people to see the report on the latest draft.
Right. So you can go to asheville.nc.gov/missing-middle. That's the project page. And we have 4 short videos that can kind of give you a background if you haven't, if you don't know anything about Missing Middle.
Mm-hmm.
You can download the report and you can provide comments by emailing me or setting up a time to have a discussion by phone if that's preferable.
And I would encourage everybody to actually do that, because from just talking to people in my neighborhood, that almost the people in my neighborhood have not been following this, and there's not a lot of understanding to what is proposed. And it's quite an effort by the city, I have to say.
That we have a couple of public meetings that's posted right here on this page timeline. Actually, one is today at 4 o'clock. If you want to log in, you can click that button there to register. There's also one on December 14th, which is next Thursday. Beside that, if you feel like we need another meeting on this, we can talk about it. We're really just beginning to talk broadly with everybody about what the study means and what the possible implications are over the next period of a month. We'll work with City Council to develop sort of an action plan for how to move forward. And then we'll go through this iterative process with the community on specific proposals, probably part of a larger package for zoning amendments.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you, Vidila. Thank you, Zoe. As the representative of the Coalition of Asheville Neighborhoods on the Missing Middle Housing Advisory Committee, I offered pretty extensive feedback on the nearly 150 page.
Quick update. The fire alarm just went off in the office, so I'll be muted for a minute.
Okay. Feedback on the nearly 150 page report and recommendations. In my comments, I supported Zoe and what she initially gave suggested changes, and I offered some of my own feedback, and I'll be willing to share that with the commission sometime tomorrow to take a look at. If you want to make suggestions on what I wrote, that would be fine, and I can amend my feedback before the deadline. But I think between Zoe and myself, we pretty much covered any concerns regarding our urban forest and protecting our urban forest canopy, given the missing middle housing recommendations. I will note that the City Council is due to get a preliminary update on that on December 11th. And I do believe that the report and recommendations are scheduled to go before the City Council on January the 9th. So are there any other questions or comments for Zoe or Vidila on missing middle housing? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to Vidila is going to give us hit the highlights of the proposed amendments to 7.11.3, including the tree planting standards. So we have a better idea of what's being proposed, and we're hoping that this will go before the City Council sometime early next year. So Vidila.
Okay, good thing I had both presentations ready. Here comes this one. As a lot of you know, we started making landscape updates over 2 years ago as part of the open space project we were working on. And this presentation is a summary of the key items that I think of as sort of the main ticket items. For the most part, a lot of you have been involved in these discussions. If these come as a surprise to any of you, just, you know, we can have a conversation here. This isn't this isn't City Council. We're not making any official changes, but I'll go through one slide for each of these. So we're replacing outdated images, establishing a new process that will hopefully be more successful, requesting better plans so that we can ensure that things are put in the ground correctly, working on amended tree species list. You guys know about that. We don't have to chat about that. Requiring formal plans for larger level 1 projects, new soil volume standards to require that trees have the amount of space they need, proposing a new green roof standard for certain buildings in certain places of the city, disposing of the building impact standard, adjusting parking lot regulations and property line buffer, potentially increasing the tree canopy preservation class C requirement by 5%, and then associated SSDM updates. So feel free to stop me at any point. First, this is just replacing outdated images. We had some very quaint, well hand-drawn images that I sort of, I'm going to be sad to see leave from our friend Alan Glines, who's no longer with us here. But a lot of those were out of date, and so we're cleaning them up to make them easier to read. A third-party inspection process. For some things in the city, we have to have a third party inspect a project before it's built, like this driveway. Every driveway, you have to prepare your concrete and have an inspector come out and visually inspect it to make sure that it's deep enough and it complies with standards. And it makes sense that we should have a process like this for landscaping, because typically what happens, unfortunately, is we have great plans and then they hire somebody and there's no oversight and the trees are put in the ground, surrounded by effectively concrete because it's compacted so hard, and it's no wonder why things don't grow. So that would be a huge game changer for the city of Asheville. Chad?
Sorry, I didn't unmute, Vidila. So on your third-party inspections, just to be clear, would that be basically on the private side of the development, or would that be on the public facing, say street trees, where would that inspection be?
That is going to be on, you mean within the right of way?
No, I mean, say the developer's planting 10 trees, for instance, and 3 of them are street trees, the other 7 are on private property. Would this inspection be on those 7 or on those 3 or all 10?
All 10.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So the goal here is to make it more viable considering staff capacity.
Yeah,
So,
and I was just clarifying. I didn't. We've probably talked about it at some point, but I just didn't recall.
we did a long time ago. This has been taking a long time. All right, so we're suggesting.
I just had a quick clarification question on the last one.
Go ahead, Chris. Yeah.
So how does it get communicated to contractors about the tree protection zones, critical root zones? Was that on a certain page of the blueprints, or where's that?
Well, a lot of this is going to be clarified. I guess to some extent we can talk about some of the details, but some of the details also have to be fleshed out. So as part of the third-party inspection, the idea is to create a cheat sheet that a private third-party inspector will have to verify whether or not a certain process has been complied with. And then they basically get like our approved green sticky note or red denied. And that's the way that the process should work. What particular review you might want to talk about is more of the weeds that we should probably save for a later date.
Yeah, I guess I was asking about not the review, but the initial communication. How does that happen?
There's going to be a contract that's going to be required by the property owner to enter into an agreement stating that the developer and the owner understand that they have to have a third-party inspection for landscaping, and without it, they will not get CO.
Gotcha. Yeah. I guess the reason I'm like asking about it is just thinking about like the different steps of implementing these projects, and at least what I've seen is that the folks that have the information tend to be the folks that are at the end of the project on the landscaping portion, and the folks that are running the heavy equipment might not get the information. So I was just kind of asking about
that's a brilliant point, and something we need to really think through clearly, because this can't be something that they get as part of the last details of the project. It's got to be something at the front, and that's why we're suggesting some initial contract that has to be submitted with the developers and the property owner at the very beginning of the permit application process. And granted, maybe I'm sure we need more than just a paper submittal, because that isn't necessarily going to solve things. Okay.
Cool. Thanks so much. Sorry.
We currently have a general landscaping plan required. We have a tree canopy preservation plan required, and we're suggesting a third plan set, which would be showing soil volumes and utilities. And this way we could have inspectors and the project team verify where the tree soil is and where utilities might conflict. And so the planting would have to be adjusted, or the utilities would have to be moved, but they wouldn't be able to, coexist without anybody knowing. So this is sort of aiming to bring to the realization, where there are conflicts. And, with CAD, it's easy to do. We're not requiring them to actually draw up a new set. It's just they'll export them on a separate sheet so that everybody can see just the items that we're interested in. Amending the tree species list. This is an old copy. Don't even look at it, but you guys know we're doing this. We started this and we passed it on to Keith. And so that's going to be cleaned up and called the appropriate species list or something like that. We're suggesting that level 1 projects that today can be written on napkin need to be professionally designed by a licensed professional, because we have problems with our reviewers who have to try to interpret poorly drawn plans, and it makes it difficult for the reviewers, and it leads to problems. So the idea was 1,500 square feet seemed like a reasonable amount. Ed?
Yeah, and I can't recall. Are we going to develop a, I guess you have it there, Appendix B checklist for applications. We are going to have a formal plan requirement checklist.
Seems like a good idea. There are checklists already, so we just have to make sure that the landscaping adjustments that we make are reflected in those checklists. Because if you're level 1, you have a certain checklist. If you're a level 2 project, you have a checklist. So we just need to cross-check those from the landscaping lens. All right. New soil volume standards. This is where we've landed. So the idea is that when your tree is for a certain distance from a building or has a limited distance of sidewalk, say under 8 feet, that's less than 8 feet, not 8 feet, but less than 8 feet, that tree wouldn't be required. Sometimes I waver back and forth on this when I see trees planted in very tight spaces, but, we can still have that discussion. But we seem generally, and generally the industry aligns with this as an understanding that you really can't get much if you have any pedestrian traffic at all. And so after that, it's basically per tree, the soil volume increases based on the amount of space. And if that tree shares soil volume, you don't have to plant or install as much soil volume, which is the basic idea. Go ahead, Chad.
So, Vidal, I know we've talked about this multiple times, but one scenario that we haven't talked about, and it sounds like, or actually I feel like it's coming up more often now, is, and I'll cite, there's a development in West Haywood up near the Boy Scout store in particular, and there's I think it was a MSD sewer line, fairly major, near the curb line. And so because of that, they've pushed all their trees to the back of the sidewalk, closer to the building. Is that a way to skirt soil volume potentially? We'll just scoot them to the back of the sidewalk, so they're 2 feet from the building and they're nowhere near 8 to 10 feet or whatever the case may be.
Without getting into the details, I'm not sure. I think any example that comes up, we need to look at it and vet it and see how it makes sense. And, we definitely don't want a process by which people can skirt it by choosing, to become exempt effectively, I think is what you're saying.
Right.
So,
and yeah, exactly. And this particular one, I think there's another one. I know they weren't skirting this because this didn't exist at the time they submitted, but just maybe something else, another little fly in the ointment to think about there too as well.
yeah, great. And this comes up to Karen's point earlier about in the alternative compliance that if it's the case that you can't plant a tree, maybe you have an in lieu process that allows you to plant, nearby. Something that we can look into. There has been some issues with where we'll be rolling this out, and it looks like this standard wouldn't be required for the rights of way because of some concern from the city in maintaining particular systems like suspended paving systems. So that might come at a future point, but for now, this is primarily going to happen outside of the right of way. Any questions about that? Mark.
Hey, Vidal.
Sorry, we just got back in from the fire alarm. We've been outside for a little bit. Anyway, sorry, I got something up on my screen. It's my way now. All right. So if this is not sidewalks in the right of way, downtown sidewalks or whatever, is this going to be things like planting islands or something?
Yeah, parking lot landscaping.
Okay.
Anywhere where trees are required, because there's typically going to still be a lot of grading and compaction of soils. So pretty much everywhere, and downtown still has a separate standard that we weren't planning on adjusting, which states that there's a 300 cubic foot soil volume standard.
Okay. All right. Well, the reason I asked, I just wanted to make sure I understood before I ask my next question. I've noticed, different planting islands where the trees are out at the very ends of, elliptical island or whatever. And so all the root development would be on the interior, the part where those two trees are sharing soil, but the roots can't grow outwards at all. And so in a lot of those cases, I've just wished that, there was only one tree in there planted in the middle so it could optimize root growth, 360 degrees around it. So that's the shared tree volumes being smaller than the single tree volume, understanding that, trees share soil in the forest and there's this mat of interwoven roots and everything in the forest. I guess I've never been able to get my head around why having less soil volume when they're sharing soil is better for all the trees involved. Understanding that they share space in the forest doesn't lead logically to okay, well that means when we have two trees they can use less soil than just one tree. So
yeah, I'm no soil scientist, and I don't think the understanding is that it's better for them, but it's at least an agreement that you don't have to double your soils when having more trees. So it may be a compromise actually, but there is supposed to be some benefit that is still being understood in how they use those soils. I think it would be better to have double the soils.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And if we're talking about a lot island, if the island was the size of one parking space, it would be better if it was the size of two parking spaces for a single tree or for two trees,
Yeah, and that would come to another point where we're talking about changes to landscaping standards. But before we go there, Chris?
Yeah, I just wanted to second Mark. So that I'm having a hard time with this table, understanding how this works. Are the columns maybe switched so that for an 8 foot to 10 foot it should be 300 feet and then 400? So you're not actually doubling it. You're just adding a little bit more for two trees.
No, okay. So what it's saying, you're right. Maybe it's not phrased correctly. The idea is if you're planting on the 8 to 10 foot, one tree in a planter island, you have to provide 400 cubic feet, assuming you have these constraints. Realistically, in a planter island, you're going to be far away from a building, so you're going to have 1,000 cubic feet. But let's say you have one tree, it's 400 cubic feet per tree. If you have multiple trees, it's 300 cubic feet per tree. So for two trees, you would still have to have 800 cubic feet, or I'm sorry, 600 cubic feet.
Thank you. That helps.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. We can clean that up. This isn't everything is trade-offs in this world, right? If it's, yes, we could do better. We could just say twice as much soil volume is required. That's what Toronto requires. At one point they had an exemption for multiple trees, but they basically just said, no, it's hard to manage. It's not super effective. So that would be better for the trees, but it comes at a higher cost and more impact for parking and everything. So again, this is a discussion. This is our starting point as we go public with these standards, and we can continue the conversation. Let me get through the rest of these, and then we can chat a little bit if we want. a new green roof standard. This would be for trees for buildings in the central business district over 5,000 square feet would have to comply, and then all other buildings outside of the CBD would have to comply on a bigger scale. It doesn't mean that all the building has to have a green roof. In fact, 40% of it can be exempt for mechanicals and exits and things like that. But in the draft ordinance, you'll be able to see that and start having that discussion. This is particularly important as the French Broad River has been downgraded in its quality, and it's the economic engine, partially the economic engine of Asheville with retail and entertainment. Another item is dropping the building impact standard. Building impact is a landscaping requirement that larger buildings have to plant more trees around them, which is inherently problematic as we become more urban. The image on the left, this is actually the Fuddruckers site, and this is the proposed Fuddruckers building. So as you have a large building, you have to provide more trees, in this case, 76 trees. But if somebody were building a small building there and they actually have more space, they don't have to plant as many trees. So it becomes impossible and illogical, and all the trees that are part of the building impact there have to cram in along with street trees and other landscaping. Sharon.
Yeah, I didn't know you were going to present this, and I'm not going to go into my concerns on building impact and read what the ordinance is now. And having sat on TRC, I've been collecting developments that are using building impact trees and also 719, and how much of our tree canopy we will lose when we remove the building impact. Now, I'm not saying that there doesn't need to be some trade-off with what's existing trees, but there will be a significant loss. And I will bring those examples if we're going to have a discussion of this at our retreat, so that everybody can hear what my concerns are, and then we can all make a determination. Because a lot of times on building impact, you can use existing trees as credit, and therefore they are saved. And so that will take out, because you can have a building impact tree anywhere on the property you want it. It does not necessarily have to be right up against that building. And that allows for people to save trees that are existing on top of 719. So I understand where you're going with this, but the great thing about building impact trees is it includes all the trees on the property. And there's X amount, and I could read the ordinance trees, and I could call off the developments I've cited, where 80 trees get to be saved or used on building impact. And on those 80 trees, they can save what's on site as well as 719. And I noticed that you increased by 5%. 5% is not a great increase on the loss of building impact if we completely get rid of that ordinance. So I think there's room for compromise somewhere on this to fulfill what you're thinking about Vidilla, and to maintain the amount of trees that building impact actually will require. So, and I don't want to go into all of it now because I need to use examples. I need to explain it because there's other things that I've got here, as well as changing vehicle use and that type of thing. And I just wasn't prepared to go into having.
Sure. If you want to send me whatever you have, I'd love to take a look at it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Next, adjusting parking lot regulations and property line buffers. I'm starting with this image because it really has to do with less is more. Some of our standards have required an overplanting, leading to bad results. So, and actually some of this isn't just the number of trees, it's actually the soil and the process that we're trying to address too. But for parking lot regulations, effectively suggesting to change the required number of parking lot trees from one deciduous tree per 1,500 square feet, which is about 35%, tree canopy for the parking area to closer to 20%. Now, some people might say, oh my God, that's a huge reduction. Well, it is a reduction, but we have a lot of images showing parking lots over 10-year periods that haven't changed, much at all, that have basically remained about 5% canopy. So with this change, plus with the increase in soil volumes, it's going to be a significant improvement for trees. Similarly, with property line buffers, there's been complaints over the years that we're requiring too many trees in these buffers. So sorry, there's a lot going on the screen, but if you just go from the left side where it says from this, and you go down to the bottom where the row is 20 feet wide, the trees are evergreen, deciduous large, and deciduous small, and the numbers are 4, 3, 3. And we're suggesting on the right to go down to 3, 2, 2, and this is per I think it's 100-foot linear distance. So it's not a big decrease, but it adds up, and it's necessary to have healthier trees and healthier plants.
Sharon?
Yeah, quickly again. So in type B buffer, you've reduced the evergreen by 2, the large tree by 2, and small tree by 2, and the shrubs by 15. And what I'm trying to say is, yes, like Ed and I have talked about Fuddruckers as an example, as densely planted existing. I'm concerned about when these when they're not existing and they're going to be planted, and they're 2-inch DBH. And it will take a long time. And I do know from neighbors that if you're going to get any kind of complaint to the UFC or a council, it's going to be the developer wants to take the buffer out or reduce it from a B to an A, and the neighbors are going, we can see everything they're doing over there. And if you're planting a 2 DBH 2-inch, I mean, that's going to take a long time to fill in. So I think the standard needs to say if it's existing and it's filled in, then you don't need to meet this requirement. But if it's all brand new, then it just depends on the size of the development. And to reduce your type B buffer by a total of 7 trees, that's a lot. Now, and I totally get it horticulturally that you don't want to cram things in there, but you're also wanting to accommodate what the neighbors are not going to see and when they're not going to see it. And that is the main complaint when you go to council, and you've sat through enough council meetings to hear that when it's a CZ, they're asking for the buffer to be removed entirely. So there's a lot of stuff going on here that I agree with, but there's got to be more than just reducing the amount of canopy just because it doesn't seem to fit that situation.
We can continue to have a conversation. This is where we've got at this point where there's pretty broad consensus that it's overly planted, leading to failures, to plant failures. Next up, increasing Class C tree canopy preservation potentially by 5%. There hasn't been a lot of tree canopy, the fee in lieu in these areas, and so there could be the flexibility to increase this to have more canopy. So, for example, in Class C, where it's currently mostly covered in trees by 76 to 100% canopy, today, if that site were completely clear cut, they would have to replant it with 30% canopy. What we're suggesting is that if that were the situation in the future, that they would have to replant by 35%. Or if they were preserving today, they would have to preserve 15%. In the future, they would have to preserve at least 20%. Yeah, Sharon.
Have we figured out what 5% is? Now, I sat down and tried to figure it out. It looks like 2 trees to me if we're doing large at 5%. So we got to quantify what 5% looks like. When I try to do the math on it from my experience on it, it could be 1 or 2 trees. Which granted, 1 or 2 trees is better than no trees. But if we're going to use it for building impact, which is 70 trees, I mean, then we've got a big difference. So
Well, it would depend upon the size of the parcel, right?
right. And that's why I'm saying, even when I do the different sizes of the parcels on the math on this, it doesn't work out to, we're trying to increase to make up for the loss on building impact. And that's where my concerns are, that it's just a small amount compared to what we're going to lose in building impact. But then again, not every development requires building impact. So if we're increasing straight across the board 5% to everybody, is that going to make up for our grand loss? Which brings me back to what I want to say is that we don't know what we are losing on our developments, because we're not quantifying that in any of our data. We're putting in what we're planting, but we're not putting what the site was originally that went in. So we don't have any calculation of if it's 80% tree, but we get to put 15% in, granted that the development is going in the middle of it, but we still don't know what our tree canopy loss is on each development.
And I'll go ahead, Patrick.
No, go ahead.
This is my last slide, wrapping up. And then finally, we need to clean up and make adjustments to the standard specifications and details manual, which has our details. And I'm just showing here a couple of ideas. One is like a parking lot detail on the far left, route paths, which are basically channels, and including a spec that allows certain projects to incorporate channels for their trees so that they can snake through concrete on their way to greener pastures to find their roots, or even sidewalk details, because when we're improving soil volume standards, we want to make sure that those soils get air and water. And so we probably want some system that allows more access to the elements. I'll leave it at that, and I'll just say broadly that we've sort of been given the approval to create this project and move it forward publicly. So we'll create a project page, and then we'll begin a process for how we're going to move this forward and how we're going to interact, and then work with you all and others on the details before we begin any formal process with planning and zoning or council. Back to you, Patrick.
Thank you, Vidila, for that update. It was very informative. I assume that nobody else has any other questions or comments. So we're going to move on to the next item, which is the vacancies on the UFC. It's only on here because I was under the impression that vacancies will be considered by the city council on a quarterly basis. And I know that the vacancy that we had last year that Chris has filled was not did not go through the process until toward the end of the last quarter. So I was under the assumption that that's how we would proceed for any vacancies in any quarter of the year. However, I've been informed that for the existing vacancies on the UFC, that will become effective in January of 2024, that we need to get the recommendations to the city clerk's office on December 29th, and that the city council will then consider those recommendations on January the 9th. Cecil?
I've been communicating with Jerry during this meeting, and apparently my math doesn't work. So this is my last meeting.
Okay. Well, we're all sad to hear that, Cecil, but we hope that you'll stay involved with the Urban Forestry Commission going forward.
I've ordered for spring 3 tall maturing trees for my property: an elm, a linden, and a red oak. So I'll be at least contributing to the canopy.
Okay, thank you. I was also informed that Karen's term on the council is up as well. She was appointed to the commission to fill the unexpired term of Perrin DeYoung. That has concluded, so she is up for appointment to her first 3-year term. Karen has given both Zoe and I and the city clerk's office her affirmation that she does want to be considered for a new term. And I don't think there's going to be any question that that will be one of our recommendations to the city council. So Zoe and I will review those, the applications that have been existing for the last several years and any new applications that have come in since last month. And we'll be making a recommendation to the council. Unfortunately, there won't be time to bring it to this body before the city council makes its decision. Yes.
Yeah, Patrick, real quick, that deadline for the January 9th consideration has already passed. I'm not sure what the December 29th is. I think that's for the, I think that was just recently sent out. So but the deadline for January 9th has already been passed.
In terms of applications?
Correct, yeah. I mean, you can still take applications, but as far as being heard on January 9th, that anything past, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago that passed, anything after that won't be heard until April, I believe.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on, they won't be heard unless we have another vacancy come up on the commission.
Correct. Yeah, but I think there is at least one applicant that it could be heard on the 9th. Should UFC decide to put one out there.
Can you forward that to me? Because I'm not aware of what that is.
Okay, I know. I think it was either Sarah or Jerry said there was one applicant that was still. That could be considered. Does anybody else have any information on that, Kim?
Yeah, this is Kim here. I'll just add a little bit of clarifying information. So, number one, the deadline for applying has passed. Number two, we haven't received the packet yet as a board and commission committee member. So I couldn't tell you who the person was. I haven't seen the application yet, but that will come out with our information for January meeting. And it is typical that we'll reach out to the chair and leadership and ask for a recommendation if we're not able to hear one from the committee yet. Additionally, it's my understanding that if we only have one application and there are 2 openings, then one of the members of the Urban Forestry Commission would continue until their seat is filled. So I hear a lot of enthusiasm for public service, and Cecil, I would just encourage you that if you would like to stay on the UFC until your position is filled, and or apply to another boards and commission, say Sustainability Advisory Committee, and bring your expertise and passion for our tree canopy to another board and committee or advisory board, I would certainly encourage it.
Thank you, Kim. My understanding was the late applicant came in after the deadline for the applications for the vacancy that Chris ultimately filled. So I'm not aware that there's a late applicant for this round of vacancies. I do know in a quick review of what Jerry Goldberg sent to Zoe and myself, and I believe Nancy, maybe you, Keith, I can't remember, is that there are still quite a few applicants still on the list. I'm not sure how long applicants stay on the list?
It's for a year.
Okay.
The applications stay on for 1 year. So at this point, if we don't have a recommendation, then the applicant window is indeed closed. And if the recommendation was to leave a spot open because you want to do more advertising, that is another recommendation that could be made. For example, the Urban Forestry Commission could recommend a person for one of the 2 open seats, for example.
Okay. I do know that for the vacancy that was filled in December, Zoe and I reviewed the applications going back 2 years because that is what we were sent to review. So I'm going to need to get a clarification on that. Okay.
That's uncommon. I would say that it's typical that it would be for a year.
Okay. Thank you for that. Going forward, the UFC annual retreat. I did reach out to the Collider to see if there is any availability for holding the meeting at that facility. I talked to someone on Monday, and they have an opening on January 30th, which is a Tuesday. The opening is for Theater B, which would give us ample technology to show presentations or have either in person or have presentations or participants virtually. There is an outside chance that that particular facility might be available on Tuesday, January 23rd or Wednesday, January 24th. I'm still waiting for confirmation from the Collider on those. So I don't know how the commission members feel about holding the meeting at the Collider and whether January 30th would be a good date for everybody. Karen?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not Karen, but
sorry.
Yeah, hey, just I checked into the botanical gardens. They have a room that holds 50, and it's $100 for the whole day. They don't necessarily have all the technology that we need, but they since the botanical garden, the office there is closed for January. We pretty much have a full reign of that space that we would need. And there would be a way to, obviously we have to be open to the public. So we would be able to work out an agreement with them so that we can allow the public to come and go as needed. The room holds 50. It can seat, make sure I got it right here in my notes. It can seat board style comfortably about 24. So yeah, I just want to kind of throw that out there as an option. It's easy for parking as well. I think, holding it downtown would be a little bit rough on parking and for the day. And then also my other part of that is, it's more natural environment. I feel like, we spend maybe too much time in an urban environment, and maybe having a space that we can get out and kind of, spread our wings a little bit during breaks. But yeah, that's what I wanted to say, and but just wanted to offer that as a option.
Okay, Chris.
I'm not Chris, but
sure. I'm sorry.
That's fine. Yeah, I like the idea of the botanical gardens. Did they give you any dates, or is that pretty open?
So since they are closed in January, they said we are good. We can do it any date except Wednesday. They have a group that meets on Wednesday. So any date in January.
Okay. Yeah, it would be like the week before the 30th would be better for me, but I can also make that the 30th work as well if that works for everybody else.
Thank you. I will note that the use of the collider is free. But given that we have two options, I'll need some decision by the commission, because if we choose the collider, I have to get back with them to confirm that so they can hold that date open. So what does the commission want to do? Sharon?
I think from I remember when we used the collider one time, they didn't charge us for parking, and parking is downstairs. So I can't remember. I think parking was free at that time.
Correct.
And my big deal is food. You know, where can we get food? Food, I know we can get at the collider, and the city used to bring us pizzas, and they used to treat us real well before COVID. So I don't know, is this going to be a potluck? Are we going to, because I'm not coming if you're not going to feed me.
Oh, I'll make you some food. What do you want?
Nothing vegan.
Oh, no. We can, we could do a whole pig or something if you want, we'll set you up right.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, is this going to be potluck? Can we do it at the, if we do the botanical gardens? And also, I don't ever remember having to pay at the collider for parking, and we just park downstairs at the bank. But
Thank you, Zoe.
As a botanical garden member, I would support us going there, but I do like to have food, and we would have to bring in anything we're going to eat to the botanical garden. There are restaurants near there, a few restaurants like All Day Darling and places like that, but we would definitely have to bring in whatever you want to eat in the morning.
Anybody else like to chime in?
Can the city cover the $100 cost for the botanical garden?
Yeah, I believe there is a budget. We haven't talked about that budget, but I believe there is budget for the rental of the space and possibly for food as well.
I'm good with either place, quite frankly.
Yeah.
I raised my hand.
Yeah.
Sharon, you and I are not going to be present at this one.
I'm coming to make a presentation on 7-11-3.
Okay, great. I would vote for the Botan myself, because if I were attending, I would be in walking distance. But yeah, so.
All right, we need a decision. So I will entertain a motion on a location to hold our annual retreat, and then we need to settle on a date.
Well, seeing how I'm a member today, I'll make a motion that I'd like to see the Botanic Gardens just for parking.
Is there a second on that?
I'll second that.
Okay. Is there any disagreement on that? Seeing none, then I'll just declare that the commission has reached a consensus to hold their 2024 annual retreat at the Botanical Gardens. Since you made that overture, Keith, can you get a date certain?
I mean, you could throw out any date you want right now. Like I said, any day except Wednesday during the month of January.
So Chardin, you said that the week before the 30th is best for you.
Yeah, how about just throwing out Thursday the 25th?
Does that work for everybody? Okay, I don't see any disagreements. So then, Keith, you'll work with the Botanical Gardens to make arrangements for us to hold our annual retreat there on Thursday, January the 25th. I think the agenda is going to sort of dictate the time period for the retreat. Does anybody have any particular comments on whether we should have a time restriction, like 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours?
What do we normally have? 3?
Yeah, I think in the past we've had 3 hours. We've also had 4 hours. And also whether we have it in the morning or the afternoon.
When I checked in with the Botanical Gardens, I threw out 9 to 3 to them. So if we wanted to, and we just have that space for that whole time, if you want, and then we can decide. I guess we have to do that right now. What block we want to take.
Okay. Ed, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to throw out 10 to 2 with lunch in the middle there somewhere. But, if we can block that whole time, as Keith is suggesting, that gives us the flexibility to do what we need.
Right. And Zoe and I will work on the agenda and share that with everybody. And I'm sure a 9 to 3 time spot should well accommodate what we will have on the agenda. Zoe?
If we have the Knoxville Trees people come or come by Zoom, how much time do we want to allot to them?
Well, you and probably Ed and Keith would have a better idea on that because you've been working with them as part of the Urban Forest Master Plan Working Group. So I'll defer to your judgment on that.
I would think at least 45 minutes. What do you think, Ed?
Probably more like an hour, just for enough time for Q&A and stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
So we need to take that into consideration also.
Right. Okay. Thank you all for that. The last item on old business is just a reminder for anyone who from the working groups that haven't given me their update on what they've worked on the past year, please do. So I've already started my draft report to the city council, and I'd like to have that finished within the next week or two. So please get that to me. We'll move on to new business, TRC transition. Just as another reminder that Sharon Sumrall is transitioning off the TRC as the volunteer representative for the Urban Forestry Commission. I think that's a position that she has occupied for 5 years now, and has done just a tremendous job in terms of holding both staff and developers' feet to the fire in regard to landscaping standards, as well as in the past 2 or 3 years, the tree canopy preservation ordinance. And I don't think we can really thank her enough for all the work that she's done in that period. Keith will be taking over that role as a staff person coming January. So Sharon, I don't know if you want to share any parting thoughts, comments, words of wisdom to us or to Keith?
Well, I'm hoping somebody wants to be. I had no idea I was going to end up being the wonk that I did on ordinances, and paying attention to developments and what's going on. There's a couple things I want to say. Alternative compliance does not exist in conditional zoning in CZs. So if there is something that, and it's again, more times than not, property line buffers. If it's a CZ and they don't want to do a property line buffer, they will ask for relief in the form of what's called a condition. So anytime anybody does not want to meet the UDO on any part of it, on a development, they will ask council for a condition. And that means they're saying, I want relief from this. And I want relief from it because of whatever. So when you're dealing with regular developments that aren't CZs, I have to go into the conditions and I have to read what they're wanting not to do with either 711-3, 719, they'll fee in lieu. They cannot get out. They have tried a couple times to get out in 719 and said that they didn't want to comply with it. And I would respond, Urban Forestry Commission does not support that. All right. So generally 719 is baked in. It's great. No one's asked for any relief from that, but they do on every other development. So what we do not know, once again, as I just said to Vidila, we do not know what we are losing.
Mm-hmm.
We have what we are planting. We have no idea what we're losing. I know what we're losing because I look on the plan and it tells me how many square feet is canopied. And then it'll talk about how much is going into parking, how many square feet, and they just divide it down, divide it down, divide it down. And then we've got 719, what percentage they're required and how much fee in lieu. And so we are losing massive amounts of tree canopy due to development, which is standard for everybody, right? But how much are we losing? Then on top of what we're losing there, we're losing on CZs for the developers that do not want to comply with 711-3. All right. And they will ask for it all the time. So we are losing on that end as well. And I have never seen council not approve whatever the developers have asked for. All right. As far as 711-3, on other things, that's none of my business. So if they're asking because they can't do a buffer, then generally council will say, okay, it's better that we have the housing as opposed to the buffer. And that's how that will go. And I'll go to council meetings to watch how this goes. And that is generally how it goes. So, only way you're going to know that, and the only way that I'm going to be able to tell you what Vidila's plans are that are good and what I think are not so good is if I get everybody's attention and someone wants to read the ordinances and understand the ordinances and understanding the changes that Vidila is proposing other than me. Because when I go, you're not going to have that knowledge unless you're reading it. All right. And when somebody on staff says, I need to change this, that may be a good thing and it may not be such a good thing. But you're not going to know to have an opinion if you don't read the ordinance, understand what they're going to do. All right. So someone's going to have to step in there and have that vocal voice that I've been yammering at all of you for the last 5 years. And I'm hoping somebody will pick it up and want to do that. And I'm willing to help with every bit of knowledge I have in that presentation. But the first one on my list is this report that's got our month year to date of what our canopy planted and canopy preserved. We need to know what's being lost.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you, Sharon.
And thank you. It's been great to be on Urban Forestry Commission. I had no idea how wonderful a commitment this was going to be. When I was asked to get on it, I said no, and then I said okay, and it's been an amazing commitment for me. And the people I've met and worked with, it's just been great. So thank you all for being in my world.
Well, thank you, and we all have an unlimited debt of gratitude to you for all your work you've done on the TRC, and we have all the confidence that as he gets his feet more wet and immersed into the weeds, that Keith will pick up that baton that you've carried for the last 5 years and continue it on.
Mm.
So thank you. The next item I'll try to deal with quickly. Kim Roney came up with, I think, a great idea to honor the departing members of the Urban Forestry Commission. And she was specifically talking about Cecil and Sharon for their outstanding contributions, not only for the commission, but for our urban forest. And she was recommending that we plant some trees in their honor and have a plaque that identifies why these trees are here. And so I've added to that both Stephen Hendricks, under who, as chair of this commission, we made some great strides, including the tree canopy protection ordinance, the zero net canopy loss resolution, and many other things that we see the benefits of today. Of course, and Don Chavez, who spent a lot of years on the commission as the representative from Asheville Greenworks, and who, among her many contributions, was doing all the heavy lifting on our very successful 2019 symposium on climate change in our urban forest. So I reached out to Eric Bradford of Asheville Greenworks. He is willing to donate the trees for this. So I'm thinking of a tree for each of those 4 people and have a plaque wherever they're planted. And I can work on the language and share it with commission members. But I would welcome your thoughts. You don't have to give it to me today or to us today, but share it with the other commission members via email where these trees should be planted. I would like to see them planted in a very public place where there's a lot of traffic, so these people can get the recognition that they so justly deserve. So,
Thank you.
Sure. Moving on, we have nominations due for vice chair and for chair for 2024. So I will welcome any nominations for, I'll start with vice chair. Any nominations for vice chair for 2024? Ed?
Yeah, I would like to nominate Zoe to continue as vice chair for 2024 and nominate you to continue as chair for 2024 as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's been the nomination for Zoe to continue as vice chair and me to continue as chair. Are there any other nominations? Okay, seeing none, I will entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, other than I really do appreciate Zoe continuing as vice chair. She's been a great support to me in this past year, and I couldn't do a lot of what I've done without her being there. So I just wanted to publicly thank you, Zoe, for that. So with that said, I'll call the roll. Chris?
Aye.
Karen?
Hi.
Chardon?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye, and thank you for your good work too, Patrick. You're a great chair this year.
Thank you. Sharon?
Aye, and I concur with Ed.
Thank you. Cecil?
I concur with Ed and Sharon.
Zoe?
And I concur with Ed, Sharon, and Cecil.
We have a lot of concurrence going around. There's probably some kind of vaccine for that, I would imagine. And although I'm not comfortable with voting for myself, I realize that under city policy and state law, I have to vote yes or no. So I'm going to vote yes. So thank you all for that. I consider it a real privilege and honor to have served you as chair for most of this year, and look forward to doing the same next year. I'm going to dispense with my closing remarks. I'll do that by email. And so the only other item for discussion is if the commission would like to hold an informal holiday get-together. What's your wish? We've done that in the past.
Fun to me.
Okay.
I think that would be fine. I just don't know what my schedule is for the next couple of weeks.
All right. Well, since there seems to be still a lot of concurrence going around, Zoe and I will get together and plan for that, and we'll send out some dates to people, and we'll go from there. Yeah. Cecil or Chardon? Go ahead.
Okay. Since I have been told during the course of this meeting that this is my last meeting, I somehow counted the years differently. And oddly, that Sharon started before I did, and we're both cycling out at the same time. Who knows? What I wanted to say is, after 14 years of being associated with this commission, I have been really impressed by the dedication of citizens in this city to make improvements. And it is agonizingly slow. I can't believe that in the first meeting when I was on city council, I became the liaison in 2010. The first discussion was about the recommended species list. We are still talking about the recommended species list and corrections to it all these years later. Y'all have to have real patience to hang in there. And I'm glad I'm leaving it to people who really care. And as I said earlier, I'm going to plant 3 tall maturing trees in the spring on my property in the city of Asheville. And I wish you all luck and happy holidays.
Thank you, Cecil. And I would urge you and Sharon not to be strangers and to show up anytime at any of our meetings. and, certainly keep in touch. So thank you both very much. So if there's nothing else that anybody wants to bring up, and since consensus is going around, I won't entertain a motion. I will just say that the December 2023 Urban Forestry Commission meeting is hereby adjourned, and we'll see you all soon.
Thank you. I'm going to miss y'all.